Hello, my name is Andrew Alvarez. Today I will be talking about an ethical dilemma that I experienced at my internship. A little background information, the max capacity that we can hold is 12 boys to 6 girls. The 6 girls would have to go home to a temporary foster placement at night just to sleep there, but then from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. they are at our facility getting the same care that the males do. At the time, there was 5 boys and 1 girl. The facility surroundings is what I drew right here. The milieu is where the boys will stay, and that's kind of the hangout area. That's also in the basement where offices are. The girls' milieu that we have separately divided up so the boys and girls can do separate activities. There's the parking lot where all the staff work. Administration building is where myself, the director, and the other counselor are working. That's where we do all the clinical services for the clients. Right along the facility is Highway 57. That is just important because that is where some of the ethical dilemma took place. The people that were involved, it started out with the female client that did not want to go downstairs and be by herself. She wanted to be with all the other male clients. So it was from her not wanting to hang out, and they tried to process with her, and since all the doors were locked when they're inside, the door was unlocked because the males went outside and that's where she wanted to go, but she wasn't allowed. So she noticed that it was unlocked, so she just pushed it open and left. We do have a thing called the restraint where we can physically restrain them and keep them from doing something harmful, but there has to be a certain ratio for people of staff to clients before we can administer that. It's not going to just be me doing something like that for a 250-pound kid. This happened right after school, I believe, so right around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whenever there was just some free time going on. And at first, if you look here, it started at the back of the milieu. All the boys were playing basketball, and she went out the back and walked around. And on the side road, staff would consider that processing, trying to get her to calm down because there's not too much car traffic in that street, so it's not a big deal necessarily. But then after a while, she did come all the way up over here and was walking alongside Highway 57 as cars were going 60 to 70 miles an hour. On the first day, because both days she did talk about self-harm, killing herself, it didn't matter if she killed herself here or at her foster home because there's 100 ways to do it and all she needed was one. And so on the first day, we decided not to call SAS, which is a evaluation to see if they are really suicidal or not. That would warrant her to go to hospitalization. So on the first day, we decided not to call SAS because processing with her at times when she was able to talk to us, she did not really warrant the stuff she was saying. It was kind of just more needs for attention. So with her walking around here, she did cross the road, I think 2 or 3 times, but she would check 5 or 6 times both ways before actually walking. So we were telling that she was serious about what she was saying, but she was also careful about how she was acting as well. So from Principle 4 and 5 of the EPS, least harm and quality of life, we decided not to call SAS, and we were just going to leave it as an incident of non-compliance and leaving facility grounds. On the second day, because this is kind of the same actions that happened in a row, Second day was also the same problem. She wanted to go be with the boys, and because of the behaviors that she had on the first day, we told her that until she corrected this behavior, she will no longer be participating in various activities with the boys. And so on the second day, she did a lot of the same things. On the first day when we were processing with her, it was just the team leader and the counselor and myself, which I can get into that in a few slides. And then on the second day, it was more immediately after school, so there was more staff present that were able to help process. But on the second day, she was more serious. We could tell that, I think she was able to tell that because of the way we reacted to what she was doing, she just was more serious about talking about killing herself. When she would cross the road on the second day, she wasn't looking, she was just walking across. There was a time when someone driving by said, "Get out of the road" or something, and she yelled back, "I'll effing beat your ass." So they stopped, and we were able to get the bystander just moving along and telling her that we're trying to get the situation handled and stuff. But it was a more serious issue. The second day we did decide to call SAS because we did not feel comfortable having this outcome be the second day in a row. So we decided to call staff on the protection of life, because we could tell that she was more serious and she was more desperate to get what she needed, and we were not comfortable trying to fight her while also handling these type of situations. The ethical values that pertained to this were the services that we tried to provide for her, and then also calling SAS to get her the proper medication and counseling that she needed. Dignity and worth of a person, kind of just, we knew what her life was worth. Even though she was kind of wanting to neglect it, we were still concerned about her. Importance of human relationships. We tried to come up as a team what was the best thing to do, from youth care workers all the way up to the director that was called. And so the importance of human relationships was just trying to keep everybody calm and objective during this process. And then integrity is just making sure we're doing the right thing and not lying or exaggerating stuff, because taking them to get hospitalization like they need is very bad. And if all possible, we would want to keep them out of hospitalization. The consultation that was involved, the youth care workers were the ones that initially saw the client get upset. The team leaders, when the team leader went to walk over and try to process to help the youth care worker, she could see what was going on. She had been processed with previously, so she started to escalate more. This warranted the counselor and the clinical intern to go over there and try to process more with her, and at this point, that's when she decided to leave the grounds. And then before we get approval to call SAS, we have to run it by the director first to get approval, because I guess people in the past have just tried to wash their hands away with all the kids. Oh, if they're a problem child for a little bit, then we'll call SAS and get them out of our way, so it's less work for us to do. So the director really emphasized us trying to put in more work to help the client while they're in our care. And then on the second day, the SAS worker came in to evaluate everything that had to be done. The successful parts is that no one was injured. We did not have to do any restraints. We do have methods of restraining the kids so no one is harmed or they are limited to harming somebody. But in this instance, no one was restrained, no one had to be injured in any way. Communication between professionals is, for myself and the counselor and some of the other youth care workers, did not have very much experience dealing with runaways and suicidal attempts like this. So them telling us the process of how everything works and how to do everything and when to do it was really helpful in just knowing what had to be done. And then we are constantly assessing, reassessing, and then at the end, evaluating everything that had happened. The next 3 days after these 2 instances happened, we had, I think, 2 and 3 hour meetings over the next 3 days, just because we really needed to make sure that we knew how to handle this for next time, because it was such a big issue that everyone felt could have always been handled a lot better, just wasn't. The struggling parts was, like I said, the lack of experience, so we did have to go and get consultation from other people that were working there. If we were more experienced, then we could, I guess, not take as much time. We were able to process quicker and able to just do everything with a lot less effort. The lack of processing, what got me was, on certain kids, we have to either just let them escalate and then de-escalate on their own before we can process. And other kids, at the second they're at their escalation point, they need to be talked to. They need to be taught to be brought down. And personally, I thought that the client should be, when she's at the escalation, try to talk to her right then. But at this point, because of my inexperience and the counselor's inexperience and everyone else's experience, we decided to not process with her during the escalation phase. So right here, when she was walking on the side road, I thought we could have been doing something to talk to her, trying to help her a little bit more, instead of letting her just walk all along here and just letting her be. The vague guidelines were more of, what do we call this on the paperwork? When we had to fill out the paperwork, because technically the second she goes onto the side road, she should have been off grounds. But that's considered processing, so when she walked across the road, that's when she left facility grounds. So the paperwork was unclear about running away, because if she's off grounds but in a line of sight, she's technically still in our custody. So it was very vague guidelines that we weren't really sure what to do. A lot of things that we tried to do, there was 1 or 2 bullet points out of 7 or 8 that were the only reasons we couldn't do stuff. And then the organization versus child was just kind of, how do we as an organization work to help this child, but also, I guess, in a normal way to just save face? How would we do everything we need to do to give them the proper care, but then also know what to do so we have our ends covered legally and just, I guess, in a healthy way. The ambiguous parts was the process versus the escalation. That's what I talked about in the lack of processing. That I just felt like we could do more quicker to prevent stuff like this. When to call SAS, the director decided not to call SAS on that first day, but we did report to him that she was saying it doesn't matter if she kills herself at the facility or at home, because there's always many ways for her to do it. So I thought SAS should have been called that first day, just to see where she's at, if she needs hospitalization then, because we could have always called her the second day in a row and actually admitted her on that second day. The physical restraint is that the second she left the milieu and walked around, she should have been restrained. I know the counselor was the only one that was within me to the camcorder length. There was staff about 20 to 30 feet away from there, so they could have came to help restrain, but we knew that she was gonna walk around onto the road, so we should have done something then. But I'm not TCI certified, so I wasn't able to help participate in that stuff. And then, like I said earlier, the vague guidelines just didn't really help with the things that need to be addressed. I know a lot of people say that when the rules are made, they're made because someone permitted that rule or warranted something to be made as a result. And I just feel like there's been a lot of different instances since they've been open that have been similar to this, and they just haven't done any guidelines yet. Engaging in career-long learning conferences. We're constantly getting emails in my organization about going to different conferences for a lot of different things. Most of the time they will specialize in one category, like substance abuse or disobedient or non-compliance and stuff, but there is always ethical dilemmas that they talk within there. And then asking what ifs whenever I have free time and I'm just talking to staff workers, just kind of pick their brain a little bit about, well, what happens in this situation versus what happens in this situation and why. Double checking the NASW Code of Ethics. That is always with me just to make sure that before I do anything that seems even a little inappropriate, I check that just to make sure that I'm not doing anything unethical. And then asking colleagues about similar situations. That's kind of like the what ifs, but just kind of, okay, how did you guys handle these in the past, and why did you handle them that way, and what resulted from that? Are there any questions? Yeah.
I wrote it down, sorry. My question is, why, it's a little awful, why didn't they send the girls to a different location to sleep?
Because of, in here in the milieu, there is dormitory for the men, for all the males that sleep there. We can house 12 men, but then just because some kids have sexualized behavior plans, some kids are registered sex offenders that we have, that it is just more safe and more guaranteed if a temporary foster home or foster mother will come and drop them off and pick them up, so they can still receive adequate services throughout the day, but then at night, they're less of a concern that something's gonna happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. My next question was, what were some of the ideas or strategies that you and your colleagues decided to do if this occurred again in that meeting that you had?
The restraint, the first thing that we talked about was, even whenever we're in the milieu, if someone is that escalated, making sure that there's more than just the counselor around. So in case anything does happen, we're able to restrain right then and de-escalate right immediately. But then she wasn't allowed to go outside, and the second she went outside, we should have also done another restraint if we did not do it inside, just to avoid everything. Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. At the beginning of your presentation, you had talked about restraining clients, and I know you're working with a female client, so I was wondering, is there a policy on male workers restraining female clients?
I believe there is. I read up a little bit about the TCI training to do the restraints, and I know the paperwork that follows after you have to do a restraint and stuff, that it would be preferred for females to restrain females, but in this case, I think any staff readily available and that could do it should have been the ones to do it, because she was 18 years old and she was, I'd say, bigger than majority of the staff, so we would have needed more staff to do it. And I think at the time there was only 3 female staff, and it probably could have been 4 or 5 person restraint. So if we have the numbers to do that are right there, sometimes 2 of those female staff could be gone at a different location on the facility. So women would go to women, but then at the same time, women can do men without any problems.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
I've got one last one for you, Andy. Thank you so much for this great presentation. Well done. I've got a question about the ethical decision-making process. If you want to go back to the slide, you can and kind of refer.
Mhm.
What I'm seeing here then is, would you say this is the ERS or the EPS when you're walking me through this?
The EPS.
The EPS. And so essentially the event itself morphed. Day one, you
Mhm.
found wasn't necessarily protection of life yet. It was more this, okay, she's acting out, this is kind of where we are with this. It's either the least amount of harm and her quality of life,
Yeah,
so we're gonna just try to do the least amount of harm with this client.
yeah,
And then when the behaviors continue the next day, the risk, okay, look, you know, the protection of life takes priority here, we're gonna have to take these actions.
mhm,
And with those actions then is the assessment of mental health coming in to do the assessment to take her out of the facility, correct?
yeah. So, I mean, because she had been diagnosed with major depressive disorder, and a lot of things to do with bipolar disorder and non-compliance. She had a very big problem being told what to do. She was very irritated all the time whenever we would tell her directives. The word directives, if we would say, we're giving you a directive, we're giving you a prompt, you need to do these directives, that would escalate her. So she had a very hard time following authority figures. So with that, we had to frame the way we said things, and even if she thought we were hinting at stuff, she would escalate some more.
Sure.
Which that kind of played into the bipolar a little bit, and then from the way that she was walking across the road the first day compared to the second day, I think is what really changed our thoughts on how serious she was with her allegations of killing herself.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, just if this was just you by yourself, day one, would your gut have been like, oh, no protection of life, restraints, if you weren't kind of operating in an interdisciplinary team, which, you know, typically we are, but what was your gut, I guess? I kind of want to know what your self-reflection was on that day one.
Well, I thought that I don't know if I would have done a restraint like the director wanted us to inside or right when we left the facility.
Okay.
Maybe leaving the facility, I'd understand that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But that is only because when we're inside and we're processing with the kids, a lot of times they will walk around just to release some energy and tension instead of just sitting down at a table face to face.
Okay.
So I don't think I would have done a restraint there, but then outside, I had only been there for, I think, 2.5 weeks at that time, so I didn't build the greatest rapport with her.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that have been there, she had been there already for, I believe, 140 days. So she had built good rapport with other people, and so they had known, oh, she's gonna come down here, and she's gonna walk around. But then, when she was walking here, I definitely would have tried to process with her.
Okay. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Well done.